Hey guys, J-Man here. Welcome to my video. Today we finally have a new episode of the Japanese Music Talk podcast. And this time I'm very honored with two guests from the American import shop and also event management or something. I think they will explain it more in detail later on. We got Melissa and Haley from Curating. Yeah, so maybe you want to say hi.
Hey everyone, this is Melissa.
Hi, this is Haley. It's a pleasure to be here.
Nice. Yeah, I would say you guys are from Chaotic Harmony, and maybe you want to give a general introduction. What is this all about?
Sure. Chaotic Harmony has a couple facets of our company. So we have a web shop that we run. That was the primary reason we started the company originally, where we sell Japanese band merchandise. We started with Visual K. We've moved on to J-Rock and alternative idols. And then I'll let Haley go ahead and tell you guys about how we started in the events.
I had actually been doing event promotion on my own for a couple of years. I started out by bringing Hollow Mellow to Tokyo and Tulsa. And then the next year, I brought Meteoroid. And then after that, I had already been working on bringing Chick, but we'd already been working on Chaotic Harmony by that point. So what originally started as a booking that I'd been working on kind of merged to be a company booking. And from then on out, we started bringing different bands to different conventions around the country together, kind of as a unit.
Ah, quite interesting. Maybe we take a short step back. We're talking obviously about Japanese music, Visual K, and I think also Alt Idol. You cover some of this stuff too. What initially got you interested in this kind of music specifically?
So I started getting into Visual K probably in college. I started just watching random videos on YouTube, and I think had that reaction. A lot of people have this like, what am I watching right now? Kind of reaction. And so it just kind of went down the rabbit hole and was like, what's this band? What's that band? And then I moved to Japan after college for about 2 years. So I was able to go to some concerts, in person and really just got into it from there. And the alt idols are completely new to me. So it's kind of exciting to get to see a totally new facet of Japanese music that I wasn't really familiar with before.
I started getting into it in junior high, which was several years ago now. I already kind of watched anime, and I liked some of the music that I would hear in the shows. And I had a friend that was already a fan of artists like Miyavi and Cafe and stuff like that, and she introduced me to it. And from there, we got pretty into it. I liked a lot of artists like Morning Musume at the time, and I haven't followed idols as intensely, but a couple of years ago, I started kind of looking into them more and getting more interested in them, and I noticed that there was a rapidly growing market for the alt idols, and I started to kind of look into those as well.
Yeah, seems kind of familiar to me. Also, this whole all idol scene is pretty new to me. Of course, I heard about baby metal and stuff like this, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I think it was for the guys from the Alt Idol channel who got me into this. Anyway, it's quite interesting. You both mentioned basically stumbling across music videos, maybe anime and stuff like this as influence to get really interested into this. I remember when I got my first contact with Visual K music, it was around the mid 2000s, maybe 2004, 2005. There were quite some bands like Dion Gray, Muku, Desperate Ray, coming over to Europe, and got featured in music magazines and stuff like this. Was it quite familiar in America, or was it less popular, so to say?
I think similar, because basically when I was in college was about the same time. I'm dating myself, but that's okay. Around that mid 2000s, 2005 to 2007, I guess, was like a really big boom of Visual K, and you could go to like Hot Topic in the mall and find like Cure magazine and stuff like that. So it sort of became a thing around that time, and there were more bands coming over, and then it kind of did go down after that, and I feel like we're kind of on the rise of seeing it coming back, I guess, for me.
Yeah, I also was always wondering, it felt like there was suddenly some kind of decline in interest because it was really present during that time and suddenly it dropped off a little bit. Anyway, so of course, if you're a music fan, you want to support your favorite artists, buying CDs, buying merch and stuff like that. And it's obviously very hard. Here in Europe, we later had, I think, Ganshin Records and labels like that, which also did, European versions of these CDs. Were there also some music label in America or something who picked up artists or?
Haley, what do you think? I think you're more familiar with that part of it.
I can't really think of any labels necessarily that picked up artists. I know back around the time whenever Melissa was talking about being able to buy Cure magazine, you could also go to stores and buy like Dear and Grey CDs in person. But to be honest, I can't remember off the top of my head who was releasing those. But at the time, we also had promoters that were more actively bringing bands over, and I think that made a really big difference as far as like the popularity of those artists went. That they were a lot more accessible at the time than they were kind of after the hype died down a little bit.
Yeah, and I guess where I really want to get to through was this kind of your motivation to get in this whole import shop business and event promotion, because there really wasn't a platform for this so far, or?
Yeah, I would say definitely, that's a huge part of our motivation to do what we do. Like, I know for me, like seeing fans' reactions on social media or in person at the events, like that means so much to me. And I love being able to help the artists connect with the fans and vice versa. So it's, building the scene, I know, is definitely important to both of us and was a huge reason why we got into what we're doing.
Back whenever I had first started bringing bands over, I was trying to do a lot of market research. So I had done some surveys, and some of the answers that I had gotten back, they felt like, for Visual K in particular, which was what I was researching at the time, was that fans felt like things needed to be more accessible. Like, if you compare it to K-pop, K-pop has a lot of accessibility. It's really easy to get the albums. It's easy to get the merch. Yeah. Artists come over all the time. But just looking at the merch, it's really hard to get merchandise from your favorite Japanese bands. Sometimes they will rely on having people who are already living in Japan buy it and send it to them, which costs more money because usually people want a fee for doing that. And then there's, of course, shopping services that tend to charge more to do it, but there wasn't a base source to get those types of items. And so that's something that I had talked to Melissa about, and we're like, well, why don't we try to do something to amend that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and once you decided to come up with this concept, I'm just wondering, how do you get in there in the scene? Because I read you're quite different from other shops because you have direct contact to the bands and you buy it from the artists directly.
Yes.
Yeah, how much networking and stuff like this is involved, and did you already have contacts to the Japanese music scene?
Yeah, so I've been working at conventions, anime conventions, as volunteer interpreter staff for several years before we started Chaotic Harmony. And for some reason, ever since I started, most cons would always assign me to a band. It just kind of happened that way. Like, once I did a band my first year, they're like, oh, you do bands? Okay, you're going to do the band again. So it just, by doing that volunteer interpreting job at cons, I was able to start networking with the Japanese music people, and it's one of those things where I think it's hard to break into it, but once you do, like, everyone's very welcoming in some ways, and they do want to introduce you around to a lot of other people. So once you kind of get your foot in the door, and if you do a good job and you impress people, then they do want to be like, oh, here's somebody who can help you, or here's somebody who can do this, and that's happened. We've been fortunate that's happened to us, and that's been really helpful. Yeah, I guess Haley can give her side of it too.
Well, since I had already been working on bringing bands over, we were able to reach out to some of the contacts that I already had. Like, I'd been working with Meteoroid. I hadn't booked them yet, but I did have connections with Yvonne Chick, with connections that we already had, and started bringing the bands or the merchandise over. We would talk to them and then they would ship us the merchandise.
And now we already talked about Chaotic Harmony and that you're working together with the artists. Of course, some connections were made. Are there any criteria? Do you search for specific bands or something, or are you happy to work with anyone who is interested there?
I definitely think there's a little bit of a combination. Like, obviously we all have our own biases, there's certain bands we really like, or so I definitely there's an element of personal taste, but there's also an element of, would this band do well in America? Does it fit the current market? What are people looking for? And this is probably more of like a Haley question, because she's like the marketing person, so I'm going to go ahead and let her take over from me.
It's based on a lot of what we see trending as far as interests go. We do have a survey that we allow people to fill out, of course, that says what kind of artists they would like to see. Unfortunately, if we don't already have an in with that artist, it doesn't mean that. But it's good to know, because we can also take a look at what people are saying that they like and say, well, this band might not be as known yet, but they do fit within the criteria of what people are interested in. So we're kind of able to go base it off of that. It is hard if a band has like no fan base to say, yeah, we'll carry your merch, because once we buy that merch, if it doesn't sell, it could really impact our shops. So we do have to be a little bit picky sometimes.
Right. Yeah. And also I feel like we do have a range of artists. Like, we have artists that we work with who are on major labels. We have artists who do everything themselves and don't even have a label. So it really, like, it doesn't have to be super famous or not super famous. It's really just kind of depends who we know and who has a connection and who's interested. So
sometimes the artists that tend to do the best are the more indie artists, actually.
It's true.
In which regard? What makes them different, or maybe they're more motivated or something, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to like put judgments on who's most motivated, but I guess, the bands who are more indies, they aren't as controlled is one thing, because they're either they don't have a label or the label is smaller. Once you get to the major labels, there's a lot more rules and a lot more hoops to jump through to get things approved or to make things happen. Whereas, with the smaller bands, we can go straight to like one member and be like, hey, you want to do this video? And they're like, yeah, okay, as opposed to a major label, it's like, hey, can you speak to the artist and ask them if they're interested in this? And then it's like, okay, well, let me ask my boss, and my boss's boss, it starts to get into a whole process. So it just takes longer. So I think that having the ability to just be a little more free with the collaboration definitely helps the indie artist. And I think in addition, the indie artists just aren't as accessible in general. So when someone does have their stuff, everyone's like, oh my God, I need their stuff. And the bigger artists can sometimes have a better ability to distribute it themselves.
Yeah, makes perfectly sense. Yeah. And now I'm currently looking at your shop, and of course there are what you would expect, stuff like CDs, shirts and stuff like this. But I also noticed a lot of maybe word is the wrong word, but stuff like chekies or other tour goods, which aren't that usually, how do I call it, well known to Western people or something. How do you choose what you're gonna sell, and maybe just describe a little bit this phenomenon of, for example, the chekies or stuff like this, because I think many viewers may don't have this connection to this kind of goods.
Sure. Haley, you want to take that one?
Sure. We tend to not actually go for CDs as much as the other merchandise. One of the reasons being that they tend to cost a lot to make for the artist, so they're a little bit less accessible to us as far as that goes. But we also have competitors such as CD Japan and now iTunes and even Google Play, Spotify, where that music is already available to us for the music as much. But what they do look to us for are T-shirts, the checky, tour goods, stuff like that, that CD Japan and other places don't currently have.
Yeah.
a lot of requests for apparel, of course, t-shirts, jackets, anything like that. Then Checky always.
I would say the one place I guess we do see the CDs sell really well is when we do pre-orders. We do these kind of pre-order events where if an artist has a new release, we try to sell it for about a week before it comes out, and there's usually some kind of bonus item like a signed Checky, sometimes even personalized with your name, or like another small, merchandise that comes along with it. And people are really interested in those, probably because it's a new release and because it has that bonus item. But other than that, the CDs are kind of slow to sell, I think.
Yeah. I was just wondering because, again, all those import shops or Michelle K shops I know don't have those specific items. Just as you mentioned, most have the CDs and stuff like this. So I thought this was a really interesting aspect. Anyway, the next question, I'm wondering which direction I want to go next. Maybe because we had this whole promotion thing, I just have to mention it here, and hopefully my viewers will check it out. You also have a YouTube channel, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this aspect, what kind of content you are uploading there and stuff like this, because I think there is some pretty interesting stuff, like, for example, is the Beginner's Guide to Visual Kei, and it's very unique.
Yeah, for sure. We'd love to talk about the YouTube channel. We're actually really excited to kind of keep building it. So yeah, we recently released our second episode of the Beginner's Guide to Visual Kei, where we have a Visual Kei artist talk about some aspect of the industry. The first one was about costumes. How do you get your costumes? Because Visual Kei is such a appearance-based genre.
Yeah.
And then the second one, we had you from the Sound BHD talk about what happens during a show day in Japan, because I feel like that's something that to them is so common and normal, but to us, we have no idea what that looks like. So I thought it would be really interesting for him to kind of share that perspective, and it's gotten good reception so far, and I was really excited to put that one out.
That series in particular was kind of an interesting obstacle, because when we presented the idea to art, oh, but we don't want to talk about that stuff because, we're going to tell like secrets or something and people are going to get mad at us. And we're like, no, we want the really basic stuff that you might think is silly, but people overseas have no idea about. So we went to Lin originally because he was part of the Chinese Visual Kei band Lilith, as well as doing activities in Japan. So it was really easy for him to understand where we were coming from. So that helped us get that series started of, no, just really basic stuff. We have no idea about it. Let us know. Tell us.
Yeah. And then the other thing we've been doing longer is our get to know videos, which we've had a lot of really good reception on, where basically for about a week, we take questions on social media and email from all the fans, like for a specific artist, and then that artist answers their questions on video. Yeah. We've done it with soloists, we've done it with bands, and the thing people seem to really like about it is that because of the language barrier, a lot of times the Western fans can't really understand the band's personalities. They are just, oh, I like the music video, I like the pictures, but they can't get a feel for the artist's personalities. And these videos, by having them just talking and answering questions and then having subtitles, allows them to get a better feel of what the artist's personality is and decide, oh, I think I like this member because he's funny. Like that, it's a little easier it makes you want to support them more because you understand them.
Yeah. Sometimes we'll actually get comments as well saying like, oh, I hadn't heard of this band before, but I thought the members were funny, so I want to go check out their music now, which is really fun too.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely understand the appeal of this, and honestly, I also want to do similar videos for quite a while, but obviously I don't have any contacts to the scene there, and so I really appreciate the work of people who like you, who really have the time and effort to translate those interviews, make the connections and stuff like this, because as you mentioned, it's quite hard, for a Westerner.
Yeah, no, yeah, thank you for saying that, because it this is kind of, I think I have to give the obligatory shout out to our Patreon, which we just started, which for people who aren't familiar, Patreon is a website that allows people to help support content creation. So we have, these videos do take a long time to translate. I think I was working on the second visual K guide video for 9 or 10 hours to get it done one day. So, these, otherwise we're not getting paid for the videos. Our channel's not monetized yet because, unfortunately, thanks to Logan Paul, they changed some of the requirements. So, so now it's
they don't say that's why, but
it's probably why. There's a lot of internet rumoring, so yeah, they didn't say it's why, but it came out very close to it. So, so we're just trying to build our channel more, and if anyone out there wants to support us, you can visit our Patreon. It's linked a bunch of places. I'm not sure where.
And I'm pretty sure I will also link it beneath this video. So, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Exactly. As well as all the other important stuff like the YouTube channel, the Facebook, social media, and the web shop, of course. One last thing, also what I saw on your channel are those announcement videos for artists participating in conventions, and maybe we can go over there about this event plans and stuff like this. So
yeah, sure. I don't know, Haley, that's more your field, so you should probably start on that one.
Those we do just whenever we have an artist going to a convention. It's always more fun, I think, because of course we make the announcement on our social media, it's written out, but I think it's more exciting for people who are looking forward to seeing the band to see them say it themselves. It also gives us a chance to attach a music clip of some sort, because there's always going to be people who are going to the convention who maybe haven't heard of them. Yeah. And then it gives you a chance to kind of get to know their personality much better than you can from us saying, hey guys, so-and-so's going to this convention. So it's a fun way to do it, I think.
Yeah. And talking about those conventions, maybe you want to share what kind of events are currently planned, because on your Facebook I saw this KatsuCon thing and also this Tokyo and Tulsa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so far for 2019 we have 3 conventions solidly announced. The first one coming up is KatsuCon, February, I think 15th to 17th. I hope I'm remembering that. So in a couple months, and we're going to have Lantana, who's a visual kei band, and Akira, the model and singer who did the ending theme song for Black Butler. So we're bringing them to KatsuCon. So that's going to be really awesome. We're really excited. It's our first time to do KatsuCon, so we're super psyched about that. Haley, you want to go ahead and talk about Tokyo and Tulsa?
Yes, we're doing Tokyo and Tulsa again, which is my 5th year doing it, so I'm really excited. We'll have Ice coming out, who is coming as a soloist, but people might recognize him from Black Jean for the Next Scene, as well as Zodiac.
Oh, okay.
He's coming as a soloist, but he's bringing some support members with him, which we're also really excited to have them too. He's bringing Sarshi, who is in Hero, Nana, Flutter Echo, Aki, who people might recognize from Saudi. Nana, and Accessory, which is his solo project. And then Hyuga, who is a drummer of Avanchik, so that makes his second time at Tokyo and Tulsa, so we're really excited to have him back as well. And then we'll also have Seinan, who is not technically an idol, but she kind of runs in the same crowd, I would say. We're having her with her brand Kissed Kill for the streetwear kind of side of the fashion show. And she's also going to be doing a performance too, kind of like a mini show somewhere in the middle of the convention. Undecided when yet.
And the third event we already scheduled for next year is NecoCon in Virginia. It'll be our 2nd year. This year was our 1st year there, and it was an awesome experience. So we're really excited to already have it, nailed down for next year. And we'll be bringing Hollow Mellow out, which is collaboration with Mar Creation, another company that represents them here. And we also are working on a ton of other things for next year. So there might be more guests to announce at cons that are already announced, or there might be new cons completely to announce guests for. So hopefully everyone will keep an eye out on our social media for lots of that stuff.
I have a sneaking suspicion that 2019 would be a really good year for people who like both visual kei and alt idols. So I'm really excited to actually be able to announce some of the stuff we've been working on.
Yeah, sure. I really hope that it puts up a little bit more traction again, because I think there's just so much great music to discover there from Japan.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And everyone keeps saying, Visual K is dead, Visual K is dead, or like it's not though. Like every time we bring bands and people just come out of the woodwork, and I mean, Tokyo and Tulsa itself, like people come from all over the country to see these bands, and you can't really say it's dead when you see so much support coming out for it. And even every time I try to explain to people, of what our company is, like people who aren't interested in Japanese music or don't know anything about it, they're just like, there's a need for that. Like there are customers for that. And I'm like, yes, there's definitely people who want this. So.
Yeah. And I mean, we see already a bunch of very talented newcomers. I think Kisu, Dimlim made much progress this year, and there are tons of others to discover. So I wouldn't call the scene dead. So yeah.
I agree.
I think more than dead, it's that it's changing. And it's the same thing in America too, where rock is not quite on the rise like it used to be. I think pop is kind of taking the front seat. And I think Japan is experiencing something similar. So that trend is, of course, affecting the rock bands that are around to begin with. So I'm noticing kind of a trend of more upbeat, poppy type bands as opposed to the dark, angry, heavy metal bands that were a couple of years ago. Of course, there are some that are always going to do well, like the Gazette and, Deer and Gray and stuff. But
yeah, I think even in the Visual K scene right now, we're seeing an upswing of oshare and more colorful kinds of bands are now becoming more prevalent in the last couple of years. And then the dark bands are sort of less prevalent, but Visual K always seems to go through a sort of roller coaster of like, well, now this is popular, now this is popular. So I'm sure it'll come back around to the dark stuff and the heavy stuff, but it seems like currently right now we're seeing a little bit more of an upswing of the poppier stuff.
Shots fired at One OK Rock. Anyway, talking about Visual K having its up and downs and cycles and chains, I mean, it was always like this. Just take a look at bands like Muku or Girugamesh. They made complete 180s during their career, so it maybe mirrors a little bit this feeling of the scene.
Yeah, and there's like a couple bands too that have gone from more Visual K to more kind of mainstream, like All's Dead became All's, and their style is very different. And I can't think of some of the other ones. Initial
maybe
L.
A9?
Yeah, A9 also. Initial L from Lycon has become very different. There's a lot of bands that feel like, I can't, like, I don't know, Visual K is not working, let's go more mainstream. I don't know if it's a thing about age or if it's the scene, I'm not sure, but it does seem like that's becoming a trend too.
Of course, we can't speak for the artists. That's just kind of our interpretation of the scene, just as somebody, been working with it.
Yeah, but maybe it's just, I just had this idea right now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe it's just splitting a little bit more into the different extremes. And because on the other hand, at the moment you have bands like Nocturnal Bloodlust doing really well, and they are really extreme in music. So maybe that it goes into both directions. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. Like, honestly, I'm just speculating at this point, but it seems like maybe like those bands that can find their niche, and be like, okay, I found the heavy metal fans and they love us and we're sticking with that, maybe that works for them. And then other bands are just trying to figure out kind of where to go and where their fandom is and where their place is. So it's probably just a matter of each band's like self-discovery, maybe. That's sort of my, I guess, take on it.
And we have bands like Diora that they've really stayed the course pretty much the entirety of their career, which I think recently they were in China, like within the last week or two. So that's exciting. They're kind of starting to go abroad more as well.
Yeah, Diora, I share the same opinion. They didn't change much. Now we were talking about the Visual K, and maybe we want to make a turn back to this whole alt idol scene. As you mentioned, both of you are relatively new to the scene. Me as well. Maybe talk a little bit about how this caught your interest.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's something I think about the alt idols I enjoy because they the dichotomy of the cuteness and then also the screaming or like the hard music. I really enjoy that because I mean that's more my type of music, but like it's just I don't relate to the sugary sweet idols as much. Like I think they're really cute and I like them on some level, but the alt idols definitely call to me a little more because they have that more punk and rock attitude, and I think they're a little more willing than the mainstream idols to like show their personality and be a little more like rough around the edges. So it's easier for me to relate to them, I think.
I would agree. I think one of the first alt idols that we worked with was Candy Syrup, and I had actually reached out to them after watching them because they have idol death ska, and I thought that was really fun because it's a combination of this hard rock kind of music mixed with ska, but it also has a really cute idols, and you have no one screaming in the background. And I was like, this is really fun. And I ended up reaching out to them, and they did really well when they came here, which was exciting too.
Yeah.
There are idols like Burst Girl that mix punk with it as well. That's really interesting to see. Like some of the idols that you're seeing have gone in some really interesting original directions.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
and to watch and see what they do next.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really on my radar until I think it was by accident I came across the Necronomidol album, the last one, and I made a review on my channel, and because I just liked it so much, and suddenly I had all these people in my comments and recommended me more from the whole scene, and I wasn't even aware how big this has become by now.
Yeah, we definitely, I think, kind of got a taste of that too when we brought Candy Syrup out because they're our first alt idol booking, along with Saint Anon came at the same time. But when we started working with Candy Syrup, like the amount of kind of support of the fans was so overwhelming in like a good way. And you know, having them come out to Saboten Con and go to the event to see Candy Syrup and be able to talk to them was just really nice. And everyone was so friendly and just, I didn't really expect that kind of, I guess, reaction or thing to happen. So that was really cool to see. And it definitely made me want to keep working with the alt idols and like get more into it. So thanks, fans. You're the awesomest.
Also, we did originally start as a Visual K store, and we started working, bringing Visual K artists over. But I think that there is a little bit of overlap between Visual K and alt idols. There's definitely a lot of bandmen that actually like them, which is really funny. Yeah. That sometimes the music can be similar enough where even Visual K fans might find some idols that they find interesting, or perhaps the idol fans might find some Visual K bands that they think mesh well with their taste. So I think there could be potential for some really good overlap between the two.
Yeah, and actually, like what we found out that surprised me, some Visual K bandmen actually do work in the alt idol scene as composers. Some of them write the music as well. So it does definitely have musical overlap, even if people don't realize it right away.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty surprising if you look closer into some of those bands who are the ghost writers behind them. I think even, wasn't it from Deluy, who was playing in Baby Metal? How was he called again?
I'm not sure.
Was it Leta? I think so. Yeah. And anyway, also, I think in Baby Metal were also some members from Bloodstained Child and bands like this where you really wouldn't expect them writing in such a project. So, yeah. Yeah. I think that's already it. I'm wondering, do you even make this distinction nowadays between, let's say, J-rock? I heard some people don't really like this term because it's a little bit disrespectful to just reduce a band to this Japanese aspect. Talking more general about bands like 1OK Rock and maybe 9mm Parabellum and stuff like this. Yeah, what's your perspective on this?
That's interesting. That's the first I really heard of like that opinion, but I can kind of understand because I think, 1OK Rock, I think a lot of the members live here. At least one of them lives in the States now, and they definitely do a lot of their activities in the States. So it does feel sort of strange to refer to them as J-Rock because you're like, when does that line happen? Like, when did they cease being J-rock and just be rock? You know, when are they a Japanese band versus a band? And that's even that seems very kind of like a very Western sort of view on things, to think, well, the stuff that's here is bands, but the stuff that's there is Japanese bands. But it's kind of complicated too, because I think Japan does have a very strong sense of nationality, and they're very proud of their country. So they do feel like, well, we're a Japanese band, you know. So I think it's sort of a complicated issue, I guess, because I can see both sides of it. But yeah, I don't know if there's really a good, perfect answer to that question, but it's definitely something interesting to think about.
I think it's kind of the same thing with visual as well, because it's like, well, what makes a band visual kei? Well, if the band thinks they're visual kei, then they're visual kei. I mean, artists that has a lot of what people would think of as visual kei styling, but they don't label themselves that. So technically, we can't call them that. It's up to the artists themselves. And I understand why, as artists get bigger, they tend to want to break away, because it starts to feel like a mold. And it's not wanting to limit yourself to that particular mold. So I think the same kind of logic could also apply to J-Rock as a label as well.
Yeah, possible. I'm just wondering, visual kei, I'm wondering, maybe in the beginning it's really like a door to open more possibilities, but once you got a little bit more popular, it may feel a little bit restricting to be reduced to this whole thing. I don't know, because I think, wasn't it Dion Gray for quite a while? People weren't even sure if they consider themselves visual kei anymore. So, I mean, now they returned completely to it, but yeah, I think maybe more of a Bo and Ouroboros era.
Yeah, I think we definitely have seen that, you know, happen in the scene, where people, they start at visual kei and they're extremely visual, very heavy makeup, and then they sort of like calm down kind of the older they get, or at some point want to calm down more, and then every once in a while they calm down and then they get crazy again. So it sort of just kind of just depends on each band. But yeah, I don't know exactly what causes that. I don't know if it's, you know, a desire to break out of that mold, or they feel restricted. I don't know what it is. But and it's interesting too, because in some ways it's easier to sell in VK, in some ways it's not. Like, this is just honestly my own opinion. It's not based on anything else, but it seems like as a rock band, you're competing with so many things, like large labels like Sony or Warner or something like that. But if you're visual kei, they're mostly all indie labels. Like, there's very few major label bands. There are some, but mostly they're indies. So it's a little bit easier in some ways to compete against other indies artists versus starting out and competing against major labels. So I don't know if it's something like, if something like that has anything to do with it. It's just this is just sort of my observation from like watching the scene. But I don't know, Haley, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, there's always bands like the Gazette where their music has evolved, of course, but visually they've always kind of stayed the course. You look at the Gazette and you're like, yep, that's the Gazette, all right. They haven't changed to the point where you can't recognize them from what they were when they first started necessarily. Sometimes there's an interesting thing that happens too, where maybe bands start out as rock and then they eventually become visual kei. That's happened with a couple of artists. And then occasionally Melissa and I will be at shows in Japan, we'll be watching, and we'll be like, these guys almost, just to, of course, our opinion, they almost seem like they would be doing better as just a rock band as opposed to visual kei. And whether that's the style of their performance or just their overall sound or look, every now and then we'll have that kind of take on things as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's also from my perspective, or I think it's always hard to judge how big visual kei really is in comparison to our scenes, because maybe from a Westerner perspective, as I said before, I started with visual kei before discovering other bands from different genres, and back at the time it seemed rather big, but overall it's still more of a niche thing maybe, or not really mainstream, so to say.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's sort of like one of the reasons we wanted to do the Beginner's Guide to Visual Kei too, because we've seen time and again, people have this idea that these visual kei bandmen are like celebrities in Japan and everyone must know who they are, and how can they ride a train? That's crazy, you know? But it's not really that big. And So I think it's nice sometimes to have the artists talk about the kind of shows they play. Like, we'd love to be able to do something where we kind of show people what a live house in Japan looks like, and like what sort of venues they play and things like that, because they really range in size. And some of them have played something as large as Budokan, like that has happened, so it does range. But you know, a lot of these live houses are kind of small, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just kind of goes to show you the scene is a more indie scene, it is a more niche scene, and I think because of that, it does need the support more than anything, and that's why we like to support it, because it's kind of its own special little thing, and you know, it's always going to have a special place for me, and I think all fans of Visual Kei feel that way. So
yeah, definitely.
I think to kind of put some perspective on it too, the Visual Kei band will play venue that's between 100 to, at a higher scale, like 500 person capacity. So it's definitely a very small and insular scene, and the more support that they get, not just in Japan, but outside of Japan too, the more they can grow. I think as small of a scene as it is, the more support that they have worldwide, the better it is for them.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely. But it's interesting hearing these numbers to really put it into perspective, because as I said, it sometimes seems different from a European perspective. Yeah, talking about support and showing attention to some artists, are there maybe some special artists which you may want to recommend, or maybe some newcomers which you think have the potential to turn out to be a really great new Visual Kei band maybe?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, if we're allowed to like show our biases right now.
It's okay.
There's a Visual Kei band called Heidi. Heidi's been around for a long time, but for some reason, like, not as well known as some of the other bands, but I absolutely love them. Their music is basically exactly like my level of music. It's not too hard, it's not too soft. It's like right in this nice comfort zone for me, and they have harder songs and softer songs over there. They've been together, I think, 12 or 13 years. So a long time. Never changed members. You know, they've always had the same lineup and everything. So just really solid. And I want people in the West to know more about them and to listen to them more, because they're so good live, and they're just, I love them so much. Like, they're my favorite Visual Kei band. Other ones I like are, we work with a soloist named Haru, and he used to be in the band Universe. And now he's a soloist. He has his own band, and he's starting a new band this coming year. In 2019, he'll have another band, which I'm really excited for him to announce. And yeah, it's just, he's a really gifted singer. I think his voice is really great, and he does so many different styles of music, acoustic or rock, and it's just really lovely to see him. And I don't know, I can name so many. I'm gonna let him go and name some.
Montana is actually one of the ones that I really think are interesting. They're one that we actually just saw them live and reached out to them and were like, hey, would you like to come to America at some point? The band members were very, very pleasant to talk to. Live, I feel almost like they have a style that's almost reminds me of the way that American bands perform. So I think they could do very well here. I'm really excited to be able to show them to an American audience at Katsucon. I'm really looking forward to that. Another band that we think the Gallo is really interesting live. That was probably one of the most fun performances that we've seen since, we were in Japan. You could tell that the band members put a lot of thought into the performance itself. The music was fun to listen to. Another artist that I personally just really enjoy is also Razor. I think they've done some really interesting songs that I enjoy listening to on my own. So I'm excited to see where they continue to go in the future as well.
Yeah. Some of these bands I actually didn't listen for quite a while. For example, Heidi. And also Razor, I think I didn't check out the last few singles or something. Definitely gives me some ideas which bands I have to check out again, and hopefully my viewers will do the same. Yeah, hopefully. Anyway, I think we are almost coming to an end. We already reached the 45 minutes mark. Maybe we have December, the year is almost over. Are there any plans for next year beside those events? maybe do you want to expand the shop in some directions or something? Maybe any hopes or projects to announce?
Definitely want to expand the YouTube channel much more. So we're working on that. It honestly just depends like how much time we have to be able to translate and stuff. So that's a big issue, but that's definitely at the top of our list, I think, is expanding the YouTube, getting more videos, shortening the distance between the artist and the fans as much as possible through videos. And also, yeah, obviously the store, I think we would like to bring in more alternative idol merch. That's something we're working towards. And yeah, events, as many events as possible. So, you know, if anyone out there has local conventions and you want to reach out to them and say that you want, you know, visual kei guests, Japanese music guests, and if they're like, well, how do we do that? You go, well, there's this company called Chaotic Harmony. And, you know, please feel free to recommend us to your local conventions or anyone you know in the convention scene. We'd love to work with any size convention. So please, like, definitely.
I would say definitely I want to do more with the alt idols. That includes adding their stuff to the store. We have some that we're working with that we haven't necessarily featured them on YouTube or in the store yet, but hopefully we'll be able to do that early next year. I'm really excited for that as well.
Nice.
So that would be nice to be able to expand on very soon.
I really like the idea to expand further on the YouTube channel, and I know it's a lot of work, but I really want to see the whole YouTube scene for Japanese music to grow. And I think recently it's only mostly through reaction videos and stuff like this, but it's nice to have some channel which provide actual content with some very interesting insights. So definitely interested to see more from you in this regard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Our YouTube channel goes, I like it because I feel like we're able to give the artist an international voice that they maybe didn't have before. Because there's been a lot of written interviews and stuff where, you know, the website or whoever takes the interview will translate it. But I feel like there hasn't been as much visual content that can be more universally understood. So that's something that I'm really excited about being able to do.
Yeah, I agree. Like, video is just so different. You know, you can read somebody saying something, but seeing them say it, hearing the way they say it, seeing their facial expression, like, it's a completely different experience, I think. So as much as the videos are hard to translate, it's definitely worth it for sure, because I think it just gives you such a different experience than reading something.
Yeah. So I would say thanks for joining me today in this podcast. And of course, to my viewers, please check out Chaotic Harmony. The YouTube channel is great. The store is also really, I just want to say 2 times great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, before I stutter anymore, I would say the last words to go to you. So maybe you can, anything that you have left to say. And
thank you so much for inviting us on the podcast. This is the first for us, and it was a really fun experience. So, you know, we'd definitely be open to doing something like this again.
Always welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Thanks to everyone who came and listened. Like, we really appreciate it. We always appreciate all the support everyone's given us. Like I said, it keeps us going, seeing the comments and, you know, how people react to getting their merch and stuff. That always means so much to us. So I just want to thank everybody for supporting Chaotic Harmony. We'll be 3 years old in February. So thank you so much for all the support and allowing us to come this far.
I would like to echo those sentiments as well. We always appreciate everybody's support. We're also open to feedback. So if there's something that, you know, our followers, viewers, whoever would like to see from us, just please contact us, send us an email through the contact form on our website, reach out to us on social media. We're so happy to hear from everyone, always. And then, of course, we are so grateful to JMN for featuring us today. We hope that we were able to give people some more insight into the process, and that is thanks to you, of course.
And once again, thanks to you for being here. I thought it was really insightful and interesting. As I said, all the links to the shop, the Patreon, I think Facebook and Twitter, any other social?
Okay. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, I believe. We have a Tumblr, but it hasn't been very active lately. Sorry, Tumblr.
Okay. But even that one, I will link it down there. Also your Patreon. So if some people may want to look into that. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
thank you.
Once again, thanks to you for being my guest, and also thanks to my viewers. Yeah. Thanks for watching and have a great day.